on trying to be human. Today's video is going to be of a somewhat more confessional nature. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the struggles I have in trying to be a good human being. Now, I don't mean that in a moral sense. I mean in the sense of performing well in the role of a human being, doing what human beings are supposed to do, being the way human beings are supposed to be. Now, I don't think that's a problem that dogs and cats and canaries generally have. They just simply are dogs, cats, and canaries. But human beings seem to have to work at being humans. And for some people, that comes harder than for others. And I'm one of those. I never really know what I, as a person, as a human being, should be doing in a social situation. Now, of course, I've observed other people doing these things. I've seen it in real life. I've seen it on television and in cinema. I've read about it in books. Of course, I don't really think I can trust the non real life situations, particularly for telling me how to behave as a human being, because I think they often simply don't tell the truth. But I've observed other people in day to day life. This is what you do in this situation to be a human being, to behave as a human being. And I suppose above all else, we're supposed to be a social being. And I understand that. I understand how we have evolved as a social being and depending upon each other in a societal structure. And yet, within all that, I still struggle to know exactly what I should be doing when I'm in a social situation. Some things I've taught myself, some things I've learned eventually by habit. But any kind of new situation immediately throws me into a kind of inner panic. What on earth am I supposed to do now to simply be a human being in this situation? One of the things I've struggled with over the years is the concept of friendship. And I'm not sure that there have been many periods in my life when I've had people who I regarded as true friends. When I was a child, I struggled with that. I wasn't one of those children who went out and played with their friends in the street all the time. I was usually pretty much on my own. When I was sort of preteen and just becoming a teenager, I used to spend a lot of time with my next door neighbor who happened to be a girl. And as we moved into those teen years, it all started to be too awkward, and she moved off into her own world, and I moved off into my own world. Well, up until today, anyway, the only other time when I've considered myself to have actual friends was when I was in theological college. And that was a very artificial situation because it was very much collegiate living. And even the married people, we had shared meals on occasions, we had shared church services, we spent a lot of time together. And there were a lot of evenings I spent with people I regarded as very close friends. It was a situation where we'd pop around, visit each other in our own rooms, or we'd sit in a common room and we'd be drinking beer or wine or whatever it was, probably getting a little bit drunk and talking about the world and solving the world's problems and discussing deep philosophical issues. It was a very intense time and a period of intense friendship. And the weird thing was that when that ended, when I left theological college and the others that I regarded as my friends at the time left theological college, that disappeared almost completely. There wasn't the same kind of collegiality or friendship available in the parish situation. And the people that I regarded as my friends from college day now had their own busy lives. They now became people that I had to make an appointment, Wednesday at noon next week, even to catch up with. So the friendships quickly fell away, really. And when I finally left the church and made the final break with that, then all of those friendships, almost every single one, simply ended, and I had almost no contact with any of those people ever again. And I certainly, in later life, had absolutely no contact with people from my childhood and teenage years who I regarded as friends. And often I see people who've been friends for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, and they're still friends. I've never had that. More recently, I've been involved with trivia groups, and particularly one trivia group, and I regard them as friends. But being the wannabe human being that I am, I struggle to know whether they are friendships as other people understand them to be friendships. To some extent, this was brought to my awareness more recently following the cyclone that went through Cairns recently. The cyclone itself didn't cause a whole lot of damage until it passed and dumped a massive amount of rainfall on Cairns, and many people were completely flooded out. Some of the worst floods we've ever had. And one of the members of our trivia group, and hi, you're probably watching, so please, nothing I say here is meant to hurt anyone in any way. And again, see, I don't know what's appropriate as a human being to say in this situation. But their home was flooded out, and after a few days, they moved into an empty apartment in my complex here. It's actually just across from me, and I can see their apartment from the window behind me. Now, apart from those early childhood years when I had that neighbour that I used to play and socialise with, never in my life have I had a neighbour that I talked to, let alone who was an actual friend. And I do not know how to navigate that situation. I don't, it's not a bad thing. I don't suggest that for a moment. I just simply do not know how one behaves in that situation. What kinds of limits are set up between myself and them? Where are the boundaries? How much time do we interact? I know if you watch American sitcoms, people are popping in and out of their next door neighbours' homes all the time. Do people do that in real life? Perhaps they do. It's certainly never been my experience. But it's just an example of how difficult I find it to navigate social situations, particularly new social situations. Now, I know for many people, and for those of you watching who are normal, you probably won't even understand what I'm saying, what I'm talking about. To many of you, this just comes completely naturally. You're completely unself conscious about the whole situation. Unfortunately, I am self conscious about all such situations, and I am constantly questioning in my own mind, should I do this? But the other night, for instance, I was going to ask them if they had any news about their home, and I thought, well, I'll just send them a text, because I don't really want to face them face to face. And I thought, well, why not? So I actually went around and I knocked on the door and I talked to him face to face. But I did not know what the appropriate way was to handle that situation. And I'm not sure that my neighbour knew quite how to handle that situation too. Maybe it's a new situation for them. For those of you who find this all, what I'm talking about, completely mysterious and have no concept at all, maybe just take the time to understand that not everyone is like you. If you find social situations easy, there are very strange people in the world, like me, who struggle all the time with knowing how to navigate the social world, with knowing what the right thing is to do. I think one of the things underlying this is this constant sense that at some point I'm going to do the wrong thing. And that's been something that's haunted me all my life. And I always have the suspicion that anybody who spends too much time with me is pretty quickly going to get irritated with me and not want to see me again, at least for a while. Now, that may be all completely unrealistic. It probably is. But those are the psychological processes that go on in my mind when I'm trying to navigate and deal with these situations. I'm not really trying to think what is the right moral thing to do. To some extent, I'm thinking about what is the normal thing to do, what is the socially appropriate thing to do, and all the time I'm haunted by the idea that I'm going to do the wrong thing and blow it in some way. I maybe know at some level that that's not true of someone that you're really friends with. On the other hand, there have been friends in the past where that's actually happened, and I'm sure that there are people out there who are normal, have experienced a situation where you're friends with someone, then something happens, someone crosses a line in some way, someone breaks one of the rules, and that friendship ends and turns into acrimony. They become enemies. They don't just move from friends to indifference, they move from friends to enemies. And I don't want to experience that. So, in many ways, it's safer to avoid the friendship situation completely. So, once again, to my new neighbours, they might have moved on by now back home. I hope they have for their sake. They've moved back home by the time I post this. But for my new neighbours, this is not in any way intended to be personally directed towards you. Part of me really likes having someone there that I can actually talk to, actually say hello to, that I feel that I have things in common with, that I can be friends with. But the other part of me is just shaking in its boots inside, hoping that I don't blow this one as well.